We now learn how to simplify expressions involving square roots, but which have more than one term. For instance, the first example we'll work through is the following. We'll be asked to simplify 3 times the square root of 8 minus the square root of 18. But before we do that, I'd like to remind us of a couple of important rules. The first is a very common mistake which must be avoided, and that's the following. The square root of a plus the square root of b is not equal to the square root of a plus b. For instance, we cannot say that the square root of 3 plus the square root of 5 is equal to the square root of 8. That is completely incorrect. So it is not equal. Now, I like to spend a second or two reminding us of this fact because these are mistakes which are very common in exams. So I'm writing a large no right next to these results. On the other hand, one thing we can do is gather square roots which have the same radicand, meaning to say the same number inside the root. For instance, if we had 2 square root of 3 plus 5 square root of 3, then we would be able to say that this is 7 root 3. That is perfectly acceptable. Now that we've reminded ourselves of that, let's go ahead and simplify this expression. So the way to deal with these really is to treat each square root as though it were on its own. Once that's done, we then gather terms when possible. So let's see. Let's work through this. We have the square root of 8, so I'll just look at that separately. The square root of 8 is equal to the square root of 4 times 2. That in turn is equal to the square root of 4 times the square root of 2. And the square root of 4 is equal to 2. So this equals to 2 times the square root of 2. Finally, we can write that the square root of 8 is equal to 2 root 2. Now, if you're having trouble following that is how we got from square root of 8 to 2 root 2, and those steps weren't clear, make sure to watch the previous 2 tutorials, in particular tutorial 1. That's all explained there. We move on to simplify the square root of 18. The square root of 18 is equal to the square root of 9 times 2. That's equal to the square root of 9 times the square root of 2. And the square root of 9 is equal to 3, so this leads us to 3 times the square root of 2. Finally, we can state that the square root of 18 is equal to 3 root 2. Now that we've done that, I want to say, the groundwork, we can go back to the initial expression we had to simplify. And we can write 3 times the square root of 8 minus the square root of 18 is equal to 3 times 2 root 2 minus 3 times the square root of 2. That's equal to 6 root 2 minus 3 root 2. And finally, we can simplify further to write this equals to 3 root 2. And we're done. We've just simplified this expression. Let's look at another example. Let's simplify 5 times the square root of 12, 5 root 12, plus the square root of 32, minus the square root of 75. Well, once again, the way we do this is to look at each of those square roots as though they were on its own. So, the square root of 12, well, that's equal to the square root of 4 times 3. In turn, that's equal to the square root of 4 times the square root of 3, and the square root of 4 is equal to 2. So this is equal to 2 times the square root of 3. And we write this, the square root of 12 equals to 2 root 3. We move on to the second one. We have the square root of 32. Well, that's equal to the square root of 16 times 2. That's equal to the square root of 16 times the square root of 2. And the square root of 16 is 4, so this is equal to 4 times the square root of 2. Finally, we can state that the square root of 32 is equal to 4 root 2. We move on to the third and last, that's the square root of 75. Well, this is equal to the square root of 25 times 3. And now we split this into 2. That's the square root of 25 times the square root of 3. And the square root of 25 is equal to 5. So this equals to 5 times the square root of 3. Finally, we can state that the square root of 75 is equal to 5 root 3. Now that we've done all the groundwork, we go back to the initial expression we had here in blue, and we can write that 5 root 12 plus the square root of 32 minus the square root of 75 is equal to 5 times 2 root 3 plus 4 root 2 minus 5 root 3. And now we have several radicands here. We're dealing with the square root of 3 and the square root of 2. So the only two terms that can be gathered will be the two terms with a root 3. So the first one is 10 root 3, and we subtract from that the 5 root 3, and we're left with the 4 root 2, which we can't do anything else with. So 10 root 3 minus 5 root 3 is equal to 5 root 3 plus 4 root 2. And we're done. We've just simplified this expression. Let's look at one last example. We now simplify the square root of 81 over the square root of 3 plus 2 times the square root of 48 minus 3 times the square root of 20. So, just as always, we split this into 3 separate problems to begin with. And we'll start with the square root of 81 over the square root of 3. Now, the key thing to realize here is that this is equal to the square root of 81 over 3, which equals to the square root of 81 divided by 3, which is 27. And 27 is equal to 9 times 3. So this equals to the square root of 9 times 3. That in turn can be split into 2, which leads us to the square root of 9 times the square root of 3, and the square root of 9 is 3. So this equals to 3 times the square root of 3. Finally, we can state that the square root of 81 over the square root of 3 is equal to 3 root 3. We now move on to the square root of 48. Now, 48 is equal to 3 times 16. So the square root of 48 is equal to the square root of 16 times 3. This equals to the square root of 16 times the square root of 3, and the square root of 16 is 4, so this equals to 4 times the square root of 3. Finally, we can state that the square root of 48 is equal to 4 root 3. We move on to the last one, the square root of 20, and that is equal to the square root of 4 times 5. That equals to the square root of 4 times the square root of 5, and the square root of 4 is equal to 2. So this equals to 2 times the square root of 5. Finally, the square root of 20 is equal to 2 root 5. We now go back to our initial expression, and we can state that the square root of 81 over the square root of 3 plus 2 times the square root of 48 minus 3 times the square root of 20 is equal to 3 root 3 plus 2 times 4 root 3 minus 3 times 2 root 5. This equals to 3 root 3 plus 8 root 3 minus 6 root 5. And the only terms here that can be gathered are those containing the same square roots. That's 3 root 3 and 8 root 3. And so finally, 3 root 3 plus 8 root 3 is 11 root 3, and we subtract the 6 root 5. And that's our final answer, 11 root 3 minus 6 root 5. And there we go. So remember, when we simplify expressions involving more than one square root, the trick is to treat each one and simplify each one as though it were on its own, to then bring all the results back together and simplify as much as possible. Once again, I really hope that helps.